A single night destroyed 300 years of royal laws and changed the fate of 3 continents forever. What you're about to hear has never been told before. These are the secret and forbidden details of how a 15-year-old slave girl—
We're talking about Hurrem Sultan, known in the West as Roxolana, the woman who dared to challenge old laws that no sultan had ever broken since 1326. But what really happened that night in 1534 was much more than just a marriage. It was a secret power move, planned carefully inside the hidden rooms of the Topkapi Palace, using the arts of love she had learned inside the imperial court. Get ready to dive into the most secret stories in Ottoman history. Old papers found in the Vatican archives reveal shocking details about hidden rituals, private ceremonies, and marriage strategies that turned a Ukrainian prisoner into the most powerful woman in the world. Each rule she broke wasn't an accident. It was all part of a smart plan that started the era of the Sultanate of Women. For almost 200 years, the true rulers of the empire were women, hiding behind veils and marble walls. What you're about to learn today will forever change how you see power, attraction, and the secret forces that shaped our past. Because when history books talk about Suleiman the Magnificent, they leave out the most disturbing truth. The real ruler of the empire that stretched from Hungary to Yemen was a woman no one dared to mention in public. Before we get into this shocking story, I have a small favor to ask. If these royal secrets interest you like they do me, please like this video right now. That small click helps me a lot to keep uncovering history's darkest mysteries. And here comes the fun part. You get to choose what secret I reveal next. In the comments, write the name of any queen, empress, or noblewoman you want to know the forbidden truth about. The name that gets the most mentions will become the star of the next episode. Will it be a story of revenge, betrayal, or unstoppable passion? That's for you to decide. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now and turn on notifications, because what's coming next about Hurrem will leave you completely speechless. The year was 1520. Suleiman had just become the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, taking control of a kingdom that covered 3 continents and ruled the richest trade routes on earth. Constantinople, now called Istanbul, had become the heart of Islamic power, a place where Asian treasures, Indian spices, and African gold all met. But behind all that beauty and glory, the Topkapi Palace was hiding secrets that would decide the future of millions. Inside the imperial court, a system of old traditions had kept the empire balanced for centuries.
The first and most sacred rule was simple. One concubine could only have one son. This stopped any mother from becoming too powerful. The second rule was that a sultan could never marry a slave. Weddings were only for free princesses from foreign lands to build political alliances. The third rule said that no woman could live inside the Topkapi Palace, where the government worked, keeping love and politics apart. The fourth rule decided what titles each woman could have, and no one was allowed to change this order. And the fifth sacred rule strictly banned women from joining war meetings, diplomatic talks, or any kind of political decision. For 200 years, these 5 rules had been the pillars of the empire. Every past sultan had followed them closely, knowing that breaking even one could cause chaos, civil wars between brothers, power fights, and maybe even the end of the dynasty itself. But in 1521, a young Ukrainian slave girl, only 15 years old, entered the royal court as a gift for the new sultan. She had been captured during the Tartar raids on Rohatyn and sold in the slave markets of Kaffa before ending up in the hands of Valid Sultan Hafsa, Suleiman's mother. No one could have imagined that this red-haired, bright-eyed girl would one day destroy all those sacred rules and forever change the empire's balance of power, setting an example that would echo through history. Her name was Alexandra Anastasia Lizhovska. She was born into a simple Orthodox Christian family in Rohatyn, where her father worked as a local priest. Her childhood was peaceful, filled with morning prayers and embroidery lessons, never thinking that fate would pull her into the heart of the world's greatest empire. But one summer in 1520, everything changed. Tartar horsemen raided her village, and the 15-year-old girl was ripped away from everything she knew. The slave market in Kaffa became her first lesson in survival. There, traders studied her Slavic looks, her fair skin, her bright eyes, and her reddish hair, something very rare in the East. Her price was high, not just because of her beauty, but also because of her intelligence and calm confidence that made her different from other captives. When she arrived in Istanbul, Sultan Hafsa, the Sultan's mother, saw something special in her right away. Over the next few months, Alexandra trained hard. She learned Ottoman Turkish, Persian, and even some Arabic. She practiced palace manners, rituals, and proper behavior. She learned the arts of dance, music, and most importantly, the refined skills of love that turned ordinary concubines into powerful tools of influence. Her full transformation came when she was given a new name, Hurrem, a Persian word meaning the bringer of joy. This new name marked her rebirth as a clever player in the complicated game of Ottoman power. Suleiman, meanwhile, became sultan at the young age of 26. He was not only strong and brave, but also highly educated. European visitors described him as tall, with a soft face but sharp eyes, a long neck, and a proud nose that gave him a natural sense of authority. He loved poetry and art, which made him different from the sultans before him, who mostly cared about war. When their eyes met for the first time in 1521, neither of them imagined that this meeting would start a revolution that would change the empire forever. She had strength built from pain and struggle. He had unlimited power. Together, they were destined to create the most daring story in Ottoman history. Plans began in total secrecy during the winter of 1533. No official record mentioned it, but secret letters and testimonies from palace eunuchs tell us how big this plan really was. Hurrem had spent 13 years not just winning Suleiman's heart, but also building a plan that would destroy the old system completely. The first act of rebellion grew quietly over the years. While other concubines were only allowed to have one child, Hurrem gave birth again and again. Mehmet in 1521, Merima in 1522, Selim in 1524, Bayezid in 1525, and later Abdullah and Jahangir. Each birth broke a sacred rule meant to stop any one woman from becoming too powerful. The eunuchs in the palace whispered in fear about this strange situation. Normally, once a concubine had a son, she was never allowed to be with the sultan again. This kept the power balance between all the mothers of princes. But Hurrem completely broke this rule. She became the only woman giving the sultan's sons after Mustafa, son of Mahidevran, was sent away to govern a far-off province. Old Byzantine records found in Constantinople show how nervous the sultan's ministers and advisors became. Ibrahim Pasha, the Grand Vizier and Suleiman's closest friend, openly complained about the growing power of this Slavic concubine. Secret letters between high officials warned of the danger of letting one woman hold so much influence through her children. But Hurrem was always one step ahead. Her plan relied not just on giving birth, but on understanding men, their pride, their fears, and how to control them. During her private moments with Suleiman, she whispered not only sweet words but also clever political advice. Over time, the Sultan started trusting her mind as much as her love. Foreign ambassadors from Venice who were skilled. In 1530, Ambassador Bernardo Navigero wrote, "This woman of foreign origin has more power over His Majesty than anyone in this court. The Sultan makes no decision without asking her first." The second act of rebellion needed even more courage. No sultan since Orhan in 1362 had ever married a concubine. Royal weddings were only for free-born princesses from foreign lands, never for slaves from the harem. Hurrem knew this rule was her biggest obstacle, the wall between her current position and the absolute power she wanted. To prepare for this bold move, she began removing everyone who could stop her. The first was Sultan Hafsa, Suleiman's mother, the only woman powerful enough to say no to the marriage. She conveniently died in March 1534. Officially, it was said to be natural causes, but later reports from palace doctors described signs of slow arsenic poisoning, a common weapon in palace intrigues. With the strongest opponent gone, Hurrem then worked to weaken her enemies among the men. Ibrahim Pasha, her most vocal critic, began facing a series of strange accidents that made him look unreliable in the eyes of the Sultan. Venetian spies later found letters proving that Hurrem had spread secret rumors calling Ibrahim a traitor who dreamed of stealing power.
During this time, she handled Suleiman with perfect emotional control, sometimes acting fragile and hurt, other times showing deep loyalty and devotion that moved him deeply. At key moments, she even threatened to leave the palace if her position was not made official. She knew by then that Suleiman needed her, not just as a lover, but emotionally. When the wedding preparations began, it became a revolution in royal customs. Ottoman weddings had always followed strict rules for marriages between noble families. Hurrem had to create entirely new traditions that would make her rise from slave to empress look respectable and unshakably legitimate.
The final wedding plan was made after months of secret meetings with friendly Islamic scholars. It was decided that Hurrem would officially be freed from slavery by an imperial document before the ceremony. This clever legal trick was valid on paper, but it shocked the traditional members of the palace. A slave freed only on the day of her royal wedding was still, in truth, a slave, just dressed in royal dignity. The third rule she broke happened at the same time as the wedding preparations. Hurrem moved from the old palace, where the harem women lived, to the Topkapi Palace, the main seat of the Ottoman government. This move broke a law created by Mehmed the Conqueror himself, which clearly said that no woman could live in the same place where government business was done. It was meant to keep personal life and state affairs separate. The official reason given was that a fire had damaged the old palace. But when the architects investigated, they found no real signs of fire or damage. It seemed the fire was just an excuse, a story made up to let Hurrem live right in the center of political power. The results of this move were huge. From her new rooms in Topkapi, Hurrem could actually see the meetings of the imperial council through special barred windows. This closeness gave her access to secret discussions and allowed her to influence important decisions directly. Architects, working quietly under secret orders, even changed parts of the palace to make this easier. They built hidden tunnels connecting Hurrem's chambers with the meeting rooms so she could secretly communicate with Suleiman during discussions. These tunnels were later found during 19th century renovations, proving how carefully her secret political setup had been built. The fourth rule she broke needed a completely new royal title. The name Hurrem Sultan didn't exist before. Hurrem needed a title that placed her above all other concubines, princesses, and even the wives of top ministers, something that had no past example anyone could challenge. Creating this title was a political masterpiece. Hurrem came from Persian and meant the favorite one, or the one who belongs only to the sultan. Adding the word sultan, which had always been used for male royals, gave Hurrem the same royal dignity as a European empress, something completely unheard of for a former slave. The palace scholars, whose job was to justify this new title using religion, had to stretch their interpretations of old Islamic texts to the limit. The records kept in the palace library show how much effort it took to religiously defend this bold break from old rules.
The fifth and boldest rule Hurrem broke was her open role in politics. Normally, women in the harem were never allowed to take part in government, military, or diplomatic matters. Their role was only to entertain the sultan and give him children. But Hurrem tore down that wall. She built her own secret political network, small, quiet, and incredibly effective. She used her intelligence along with a personal spy system that could rival the empire's official intelligence services. Through trusted eunuchs, loyal maids, and even minor concubines she had trained, Hurrem built an information web that told her everything: who was loyal, who was plotting, and who could be used to her advantage. This network helped her stop conspiracies, find opportunities, and twist events to match her goals. By the time Suleiman sat down to make big political decisions, Hurrem already knew what every advisor thought, what each choice could cause, and how to guide the discussion to her favor. Foreign diplomats soon realized what was really happening. If they wanted power or favors in Istanbul, they had to win over not just Suleiman, but Hurrem too. The French ambassador, Anton Escalin de Béarn, wrote in 1541, "Anyone who wants favor from the Grand Turk must first please his sultana. She has such control over his heart that no decision is made without her knowing and approving it." The night of the imperial wedding, the exact date kept secret and never recorded, was the peak of 13 years of careful planning. The ceremony was grand and beautiful, but filled with intense secrecy. Only a handful of people knew exactly what was happening. Hurrem's preparation for that night had started months earlier. Experts in Byzantine makeup, Arab perfumes, and royal fashion worked in secret to make her transformation look perfect, turning her image from slave to empress. Jewels from the royal treasury, normally only worn by princesses of royal blood, were quietly brought out for her. The wedding ceremony itself mixed both Islamic traditions and old Byzantine royal customs, blending religion and politics in a way that made her rise appear fully legitimate, as if destiny itself had planned it.
This blending of traditions showed Hurrem's own transformation, a mix of cultures that reflected the wide, diverse world of the Ottoman Empire. But it also showed the boldness of a woman who had dared to rewrite the rules of power itself. During the wedding ceremony, every movement, every word, and every ritual carried hidden political meaning. The people who witnessed it understood they weren't just watching a marriage, they were watching a silent revolution that would forever change the power structure of the empire. The bridal chambers, prepared with greater beauty and luxury than even coronation halls, became the stage for all her legal, religious, and political victories to take form. But beyond the symbols, that night marked the moment Hurrem's power became real. From then on, no major imperial decision would be made without her influence, either directly or indirectly. The hours after the ceremony were not just about love and closeness. They were also about strategy. Hurrem and Suleiman discussed plans for government reforms, succession laws, and how to weaken the enemies who would rise once the news of their marriage spread across the empire. It took weeks for Venetian spies, always alert to Ottoman secrets, to understand what had really happened. At first, they called it one of Suleiman's strange whims, but later reports made it clear this wasn't romance, it was a political revolution disguised as a wedding. The transformation of the empire began right after that historic night. The results of Hurrem's 5 rule-breaking acts spread like waves through every layer of power. They changed not just palace life, but also the politics of 3 continents. The first great consequence hit the very heart of the royal family. Breaking the one concubine, one son rule led to the bloodiest power struggle in Ottoman history. With 6 of Hurrem's sons and daughters now possible heirs, all rivals to Mustafa's eldest son, Mustafa, the risk of civil war grew dangerously high. Hurrem Sultan, who, before 1534, had been the first concubine and mother of the heir, fell from power overnight. Records from Topkapi Palace show that her allowance was cut, her rooms were given to others, and even her servants were reassigned to Hurrem's household. Her biggest heartbreak, however, came when she realized her son, Mustafa, once seen as the rightful next sultan, was now surrounded by half-brothers protected by a mother far more powerful than her. Private letters Mahidevran wrote to her sister, found centuries later, show her pain and despair as she was slowly pushed aside. Hurrem's plan to remove Mustafa as a threat was extremely clever and cruel. For almost 20 years, she ran a secret campaign to make Suleiman lose trust in his eldest son. Through her spy network, she planted fake evidence that Mustafa was secretly talking with the empire's Persian enemies, planning to take the throne by force. This plot reached its peak during the Persian campaign of 1553. Hurrem and her ally Rustam Pasha, who was now the Grand Vizier after marrying Hurrem's daughter Miramah, forged letters that appeared to prove Mustafa's betrayal. The forgeries were perfect, even including Mustafa's real seal, stolen from his personal staff. When Suleiman called Mustafa into his tent in Konya, the young prince walked in calmly, believing he was safe under the law that protected sons in royal meetings. But behind the curtains, the mute executioners waited, men trained to kill without a sound. Mustafa was strangled as his father stood silently and watched, showing no emotion while his eldest son took his last breath. The shock of this act spread far beyond the empire. Soldiers, especially the Janissaries who had loved Mustafa for his victories, rose in revolt. These uprisings had to be crushed violently, weakening the Ottoman army's strength across several regions. Meanwhile, the rulers of Europe quickly saw what had happened. Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire, Ferdinand I of Austria, and Francis I of France all adjusted their foreign policies, realizing the Ottoman court had become unstable and that they might use this to their advantage. The second great result came from the royal marriage itself. By officially marrying a former slave, Suleiman set a new rule that changed Ottoman tradition forever. From that point on, sultans no longer had to marry free princesses from foreign lands. They could marry women from their own courts, even slaves.
This completely shifted how royal alliances were made and reduced the political control of European families over the empire. Nurbanu Sultan, wife of Hurrem's son Selim II, was the first woman to benefit from this new rule. She was Venetian by birth and also a former slave. Using the path opened by Hurrem, she became the next Haseki Sultan, continuing the revolution that Hurrem had begun. This new kind of marriage had major diplomatic effects. Ambassadors now had to rethink how they dealt with the Ottoman court. They could no longer win favor just by sending foreign princesses. Now, the real power lay within the palace itself, behind the veils of the harem.
Before Hurrem's time, ambassadors only needed to speak with the Sultan and his male advisors. But now, anyone who wanted real power in the Ottoman Empire had to build relationships with the Haseki Sultan, Hurrem herself, because she directly influenced imperial decisions. In 1560, the Venetian ambassador Marino Cavalli wrote, "The Ottoman government has changed so completely that anyone who keeps using old diplomatic methods will be left out of the real circles of power. True power now exists both in the harem and in the council, and both must be approached with equal care." The third great change came from Hurrem's permanent move to the Topkapi Palace. Her presence in the very center of government erased the old barrier between private and political life. This created brand new ways for women to take part in state affairs. Architectural records from that time show that special secret rooms were built so Hurrem could observe government meetings directly. The architect's notes described tunnels, hidden passages, and even simple sound channels that carried whispers between her chambers and the council hall. These allowed Hurrem and Suleiman to communicate quietly during important discussions in real time. Her presence also changed the culture of the palace itself. Ministers and officials began speaking carefully, always aware that Hurrem's spies might be listening. This sense of constant watchfulness created a new political atmosphere, one that many historians now describe as an early form of government surveillance. The fourth major change came from the creation of the title Haseki Sultan, made especially for Hurrem. This new name became a model for future queens and royal women, allowing them to claim equal honors and rank. Over time, this started a rise in women's titles and influence. Women like Safiya Sultan, Kosem Sultan, and Turhan Sultan later used this same title to justify their own rise to extraordinary power. Government documents show that this title forced the empire to rewrite many official systems, from royal ceremony rules to court rankings and even financial payments. Hurrem received 2,000 aspers every day, more than most governors, and nearly equal to the budget of small military campaigns. This financial revolution changed more than just her lifestyle. Hurrem used her wealth to build massive public projects that competed with the Sultan's own. Her complex in Istanbul, complete with a mosque, hospital, school, and kitchen for the poor, stood as a monument to her power and generosity. Even more importantly, she created a chain of charitable foundations that spread across the empire and beyond, to Jerusalem, Mecca, and cities in the Balkans. These places acted like informal embassies, extending Ottoman influence through kindness, culture, and faith, not just armies or treaties. The fifth and most lasting change came from Hurrem's direct role in state decision-making. Her influence in politics began what historians now call the Sultanate of Women, a period of nearly 200 years, during which mothers, wives, and sisters of sultans shared real power in government. Letters kept in European archives show that Hurrem wrote directly to foreign rulers, including Sigismund II of Poland and several German princes. This private diplomacy worked alongside official channels and sometimes outsmarted them. Her letters reveal her clever strategy. She used her Slavic background to connect emotionally with Eastern European kings, while using her role as the mother of future sultans to speak with authority.
Her talks about trade, prisoner exchanges, and marriage alliances were often more skillful than the empire's formal diplomats. The effects of her political revolution reached far into the future, even beyond what she imagined. Her successors, like Nurbanu Sultan and Safiya Sultan, built upon her example, expanding women's power even more. When weak or young sultans took the throne, the mothers, called Valide Sultan, acted as regents, making real decisions about war, trade, and justice. Kosum Sultan, one of Hurrem's most famous successors, went even further. She personally chose grand viziers, handed out government positions, and decided military strategies. She even ordered the removal or execution of sultans who threatened her dynasty's stability. Of course, not everyone accepted these changes. Many conservative religious scholars and army leaders condemned the growing role of women in government. They said it was against Islamic law and tradition. Their writings from that time showed deep tension between religious rules and the new political reality. But Hurrem's system proved too effective to ignore. Under the Sultanate of women, the empire stayed strong. Its armies continued to win wars, its finances stayed stable, and its provinces were managed smoothly. In the end, the success of this system silenced many critics. What once seemed scandalous became the new normal, a living proof that power, when used wisely, could flow from places the world least expected.
Hurrem's revolution reached far beyond the borders of the Ottoman Empire. European rulers, at first confused by what was happening in Constantinople, soon began to accept the new reality, that women there held real political power. Ambassadors started bringing special gifts just for the Haseki sultans as part of their official visits, quietly admitting that these women were now true political leaders. This shift also had a strange effect in Europe. The queens of France, Austria, and Spain watched with curiosity and a little envy as their Ottoman counterparts gained influence they could only dream of. Some of them even tried to copy Hurrem's methods, adjusting them to fit the rules of their own countries. Hurrem's cultural legacy was just as important as her political one. She funded buildings, schools, and charities that became symbols of female power. Her mosques and public projects in Istanbul and Jerusalem were more than religious or social centers. They were bold statements showing that a woman's leadership could shape nations. Hurrem died in April 1558, 8 years before Suleiman. Her death ended an era, but her revolution lived on. Her tomb, built beside the mosque she herself had ordered, became a quiet place of pilgrimage, especially for women who wanted courage and inspiration to change their own lives. The words carved on her tomb, written in Arabic, Persian, and Ottoman Turkish, spoke of her victories in ways no one could have imagined possible for a woman just 50 years earlier. Suleiman was heartbroken. He ordered that no woman would ever live again in the same royal chambers Hurrem had once occupied. That order was kept for centuries, all the way until the fall of the Ottoman Empire in 1922, a lasting reminder of how unique her story truly was. But the system she built, her influence, her networks, and her legacy continued to guide those who came after her. Her revolution didn't die with her. Modern historians who study Hurrem's life still find it incredible. With only the tools a woman of her time could use, beauty, intelligence, motherhood, and sharp political sense, she completely changed one of the world's most traditional empires. Her story proves timeless truths, that power can come from understanding people, that patience can reshape history, and that even the most rigid systems can bend under clever strategy and emotional intelligence.
But one question remains. Did Hurrem's success truly help women as a whole, or was it simply the triumph of one exceptional woman in a man's world? The answer is complicated. Yes, Hurrem acted mostly to protect her children and herself, but the path she opened gave other women chances they would never have had before. Because of her, the Ottoman court created space for women to influence history. Her legacy became bigger than her life. She didn't just rise from slavery. She changed what was possible for women in one of the most powerful civilizations on Earth. The 5 ancient rules she broke on her wedding night became the 5 new foundations of a different empire, one that lasted for centuries. Her choices proved that even the smallest acts made in the privacy of a royal chamber can shake the world for generations. Now you know the truth that most history books never dared to tell. Hurrem Sultan didn't just change her fate in 1534. She rewrote the laws of power for every woman who came after her. Her story shows that even the oldest, strongest systems can be transformed when sharp intelligence, patience, and a deep understanding of human nature come together. But this is only one secret from the hidden vaults of the world's empires. Across Europe and Asia, royal chambers held even darker stories of betrayal, desire, and ambition that led to wars and revolutions. Every palace hides mysteries that make modern scandals look small in comparison. If you were amazed by how a 15-year-old slave reshaped an empire and made history tremble, just imagine the other women whose secrets still wait to be uncovered. Their plans, their power plays, and their forbidden nights changed the world, quietly, completely, and forever. So don't miss what's coming next. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell to discover more of these hidden imperial secrets. Each week, we uncover classified letters, forgotten confessions, and historical evidence that reveal what truly happened behind palace walls. Share this story with someone who loves history's mysteries as much as you do, and tell me in the comments which queen or empress you want me to expose next, because your choice decides the next secret we reveal. The secrets of history are waiting. The only question is, are you ready to know the whole truth?